Bernie Sanders just crushed it in Nevada. He won by a landslide. So as of the moment that I'm making this video, we have about 60% of results that have been brought in. Bernie Sanders with 46% of the vote, followed by Joe Biden at 19.6%, Pete Buttigieg at 15.3%, and Elizabeth Warren at 10.1%. And so far, Bernie Sanders is the only one who's earned any delegates. He has about 10 delegates, and I think there's about 36 delegates that are up for grabs. However, as early as 4% of precincts reported last night, we already knew that Bernie Sanders had won by a landslide. Almost every single major news outlet had already called it. Bernie Sanders gave a victory speech. I was actually watching one of his rallies that was taking place in Texas because he was so confident that he had won Nevada. He wasn't even in Nevada. He was actually in Texas giving an amazing, beautiful rally.
We won the popular vote in Iowa. We won the New Hampshire primary. And according to 3 networks in the AP, we have now won the Nevada caucus.
Bernie Sanders, 3 for 3. He's won the popular vote in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and now in Nevada. And in Nevada by a landslide, okay? So just to give you some quick background on the demographics, on how he won this caucus, voters of color played a huge role, especially Latinos. So 1 in 5 caucus goers were Latinos, and Sanders led with 53% of them. Biden followed at 16%, Buttigieg at 9%, etc., etc. So needless to say, Bernie Sanders is very, very popular with people of color, especially Latinos, and they played a crucial role in getting him that win, not just in Nevada, but as we saw also in Iowa with the satellite caucuses. Remember, they were holding satellite caucuses even in mosques. You had tons of people of color coming out, Muslims, Latinos, to vote for Bernie, and they secured him that popular vote, right? It was just by something about 6,000 votes, if I remember correctly. And another very important thing that I want to show you here too about the demographics of the people who voted last night. Among moderate voters, Joe Biden had 23% of the moderate vote and Sanders 22%, trailed by Pete Buttigieg at 21%. Okay, so you could say they're statistically tied, right? Biden, Sanders, and Buttigieg. But the thing that you should take away from this is that this myth that Bernie Sanders can't win with moderates is dispelled, because clearly he's doing just as well as the former vice president Joe Biden, or this new rat, Pete Buttigieg, who claims that he can build a coalition from people on both sides of the aisle. And you know what I'm saying? Bernie Sanders did just as well. So this completely dispels that myth and puts it in the trash. Okay, don't believe that. I mean, you guys already know better than most of the people watching mainstream media. Bernie Sanders can win with moderates. Bernie Sanders can win with Republicans, with Democrats, with independents. He is the unifying candidate. It's manifested through the votes. So that was a really important takeaway right there. And another thing that I want to point out, check this out. Sanders overwhelmed his rivals among the state's youngest caucus goers, capturing the votes of 2/3 of those aged 17 to 29. Killing it. Absolutely killing it with millennials, with younger voters. 2/3. Beautiful. You love to see it, don't you? So this is just absolutely wonderful. And you know, it's really good to see Bernie Sanders just winning by a landslide. We got to savor the moment, man. We got to savor the moment. I know that I was actually quite reserved with my projections because given how volatile the race has been, you know, he did win the popular vote in Iowa, but only by a small margin, about 6,000 votes. Too close for comfort, honestly. And given also how they rigged the Iowa caucus right before everybody's eyes. And then I like how they fired Troy Price, who's the director of the Iowa Democratic Party. He's basically just a pawn, a sacrificial lamb. It's like the police department's investigating themselves. It means absolutely nothing. So yeah, they fired him. They basically rigged that caucus. And I was concerned that they might rig this one too, because we had reports of shenanigans, votes already being discounted. And then what they would do, thank you to Status Coup, by the way, who reported on this, they would actually give the responsibility over to the campaigns themselves to notify early voters that their votes had been deemed invalid. Ridiculous. So I had some reservations. I had some concerns that some shenanigans might be at play. We are talking about the DNC and their local state parties after all. Not to mention that they already rigged it in 2016. That thing alone, I mean, how could you not be marked by that? Just go back and watch the videos from 2016. So I was reserved. I was leaning towards him winning just because of the fact that he does have really enormous Latino support in Nevada. I know that personally from my own friends there. And that's why I was kind of leaning towards that he might win it, like on the ground, if no shenanigans take place. So I'm really glad that he did. And man, the reaction from the mainstream media, oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to barf or I'm supposed to laugh, because Chris Matthews, he is back at it once again. I mean, it's so disgusting. It really is. I just want to show you the clip. Look at his reaction to Bernie Sanders winning in Nevada last night.
Bernie, on the other hand, did his job. He got more than a majority of that 67%. That is the name of the game. It is pretty much over unless that changes. I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy too. I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart. And I think he's damn right on this one.
Okay, speaking of history buffs, I'm a huge history buff too, notably for World War II. So it's really striking to me that he compares Bernie Sanders' landslide victory in Nevada to the fall of France. I mean, why not compare it to the liberation of France? Why not that? No, he has to go and once again draw this disgusting parallel between Bernie Sanders and Nazis, as he did last week. I covered also in my huge video about MSNBC. I mean, this guy has something wrong with him. You know, he's comparing the only Jewish candidate for president to literal Nazis, to the rise of the Third Reich. What kind of parallel is that? I mean, the only possible parallel that I could even remotely think of is that the Germans basically took Paris by storm, right? They went secretly through the Ardennes, through Belgium, and took France in a matter of 6 weeks. So I don't know if he means that Bernie Sanders is also taking the Democratic primary by storm, but why would you compare it to the Nazis? Why not just compare it to, I don't know, the invasion of Normandy by the Allies, for example? That was also something taken by storm, something positive, I guess. No. This is the second time he does this. He compares the only Jewish candidate whose family was wiped out in the Holocaust to Nazis. This is disgusting. This is morally reprehensible by anyone's standards. And I don't know what is his deal. I mean, he clearly does not like Bernie Sanders, but do you really have to go to those lengths? I'm speechless. I'm really speechless. Like, this is so bad what he's doing. It's really messed up. It's one thing to hate on Bernie Sanders. Like, we expect that from the mainstream media. We expect that especially from MSNBC. But when you're really comparing him to Nazis and to the Third Reich, I mean, you're really crossing a line here. It's really too much. So anyway, Bernie Sanders killing it in Nevada. Honestly, going forward into South Carolina, the thing is that Bernie Sanders has the momentum now. This is without a doubt. If there was any doubts that he's the front runner, let there be no more. Even when you read mainstream media publications like NBC News, like CNN, they're writing in their articles that Bernie Sanders has solidified himself as the front runner. It's undeniable at this point. You know, before, how they would deny Bernie Sanders his fundraising figures, they would deny how many people would come to his polls, and they say that, oh, Joe Biden is the front runner. They kept saying that. No, now there is nothing. There is literally nothing. The national polls put Bernie Sanders first. He has won the popular vote 3 for 3 in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. It's undeniable at this point. Now, going into South Carolina, this is going to be another real test of Bernie Sanders' fortitude. If he can do well with voters of color, especially with black voters this time, as opposed to mainly Latino voters in Nevada, right? So Joe Biden now is also going to be put to the test. I mean, if Joe Biden fails in South Carolina, Lord, it is over. And man, the thing is, that guy is so disconnected from reality. I could still see him staying in the race. Like, that's how bad it is. I saw him yesterday. He was attacking Bernie Sanders and saying, well, hey, in 2012, I wasn't the guy who was maybe thinking of running against Barack Obama. Like, as if, how dare you try to run against Barack Obama, our holy patron saint of drone strikes. Just ridiculous. He has nothing left. If I were Joe Biden, I would really be thinking of dropping out and bowing out gracefully now before he really gets humiliated any further. And another thing that he said was also that, hey, Bill Clinton lost 12 primaries before winning a single one, and then he went on to be president. Yeah, but you're not Bill Clinton. I'm sorry, you're not. Also, look what happened to Hillary Clinton. Don't forget about that. She rigged the primary and then still lost the general. So anyway, Predictions for South Carolina. I don't know, man. Again, too close to call. I'd rather not call it and stay reserved. I'm not saying that it's not possible for Bernie Sanders to win. Given that he has the most money, given that he is literally, without a doubt, the front runner. He has just won 3 primaries, 3 caucuses, back to back. Sure, why not? The odds are all in his favor. Okay, he's the favorite. And even though Joe Biden has skipped Nevada and skipped New Hampshire before they even announced the results and went right to South Carolina, and he's putting all his chips on South Carolina, that doesn't mean that he's going to win it, right? His lead in polls in South Carolina has narrowed sharply. He is almost neck and neck with Bernie Sanders there. So it could go either way at this point, right? If you had asked me a few months ago, I wasn't so sure because we hadn't had any primaries yet, and we hadn't seen Bernie Sanders winning the first 3. And Joe Biden had a lead of about 15%. So I couldn't have said. But now it's a toss-up, honestly. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bernie Sanders won. Keep your fingers crossed. But don't count on it. It's also very possible that it goes to Joe Biden, right? So let's just stay reserved with that. And let's focus on Super Tuesday states, which is what Bernie Sanders is effectively doing. As I mentioned, I watched his rally last night where he was in Texas. All right. He was given a rally there. Actually, he's been hopscotching all over Texas. I think he's given like 3 rallies in the last few days. And he's going to continue doing that and focusing on Super Tuesday because I'm hoping Bernie Sanders is going to do a clean sweep. All right. He is going to win big. So this was a very good night. And it's so funny watching the mainstream media melt the hell down. I mean, funny, everything besides those nasty comments by Chris Matthews, because that is not funny whatsoever. Again, I maintain my point of view that that's just completely disgusting. Not just any normal, decent person, but especially as someone who is actually a history buff. Like, what the hell are you even talking about? What are you comparing that to? So that's really morally reprehensible. But in general, yeah, it's really amusing watching the mainstream media collectively lose it bit by bit as the primary goes on, as they see that, oh, this tidal wave of Bernie Sanders is insurmountable. And unfortunately, they might have to resort to rigging the election in Milwaukee. I hope that it doesn't come to that, but there you go. Stay excited for South Carolina and especially for Super Tuesday.